What's going on, Falcon fan? This is Warakundo coming back at you with another video. So, guys, today we're going to get into some Falcon fan talk Monday. Um, Off season is here, and today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about the Falcons draft strategy. What's their philosophy? You know, in particular, Terry Fontenot, since this regime being in place, what is philosophy, their draft strategy? We're going to talk about that. Definitely get into some rumors around the league about the Atlanta Falcons, some trades and things like that. Potential moves that the Atlanta Falcons can definitely make. And then we're going to get into my perfect offseason for the Atlanta Falcons. Um, and see what the Falcons can actually do, how much they can get done based off my perfect offseason. So that's where we're at, guys. Definitely excited to talk to you guys today. Haven't talked to you guys since last Monday, when we talked about some of the best pass rushers coming out in the draft. Be on the lookout for us. Definitely the cornerbacks, the linebackers, because those are more needs the Atlanta Falcons need to look at as well. But today we're really going to get into the draft strategy, and we're going to have definitely a lot of fan talk. So, guys, let me know if you got any questions. You know, Pertaining to this Falcons off season. We know the NFL Combine starting next week, so we'll get a better idea of some of these draftees, um, and then we'll try to get an idea of where the Falcons what they got to say next week when we hear Raheem and Terry speak for the first time since they're talking to the media right after the season was over. So D Sloan says, "What's going on, big dog? What we're gonna do in the first round? We're definitely gonna get to that today." So, guys, with that being said, if you have not already, go ahead and please subscribe to the channel. Please hit the notification bell so you don't drop another video. Please hit the like button so I know you guys are here to talk about. Then please share my video throughout the YouTube universe so more people can come in here to talk about. That's right, these Atlanta Falcons. So, guys, first point I'm gonna get in today is the Atlanta Falcon draft strategy. And we're not going to go over the whole draft strategy throughout the years since their inception. We're just going to talk about Terry Fontenot time here with the Atlanta Falcons and his philosophy and what we kind of can determine what the Atlanta Falcons are going to do this year in the draft. Now, I really believe that it has changed a little bit. Changing head coaches and Raheem Morris coming in, putting his spin on things and see how it kind of shifted from the Arthur Smith years, the first 3 years, to what we seen last year from the Atlanta Falcons from a draft perspective. And we're going to talk about their philosophy and what we think Atlanta Falcons is going to do and how they're trying to build this team out. So the first thing we do know, from what we can tell for the most part in this Terry Fontenot's regime, is they've been going best player available. If you look at the first pick they ever picked, since Terry Fontenot got here, it was Kyle Pitts at number 4. He was the highest pick tight end in NFL history, and he tested off the measures. Right, he was supposed to be the unicorn. That's what his name, what he was tagged as. Right, and at that time, Atlanta Falcons had so many holes. I think they could have went anywhere. They could have went defense. They could have went offense. Because they had so many holes at the time. If you guys recall, the Atlanta Falcons was in cap hell at the time, and they were just picking the best player available, right? So you kind of understand that. Now, that's one thing about drafts, right? Because when you look at drafts, and if you can go back and look 3 years later, you can see how well your pick was. A lot of people probably will argue that Kyle Pitt was not the right pick at the time. Right now, of course, it was quarterbacks on the board. All those quarterbacks, you can say they probably made a good decision because a lot of those quarterbacks that came off the board um, after that and right before that, not with their teams anymore. Right, look at a guy like Trey Lance, Justin Fields, um, the kid out of Alabama. None of those kids None of those guys are even with their teams anymore. So, you know, quarterbacks is probably one of the one positions where you say Falcons should have took a quarterback here or whatever. Um, Hindsight 2020, but if you look at other players, like yeah, Micah Parsons was in that draft. We'll see how productive has been. He was. He came to Atlanta Falcons. He could have been just as productive, right? Maybe Atlanta Falcons already fixed their pass rush issues. So the first thing we do know about Terry Fontenot is that he goes best player available. You know, it's a lot of teams that do that. You look at teams like the Baltimore Ravens. You know, they don't go for need, and a lot of times they pick best player available. That's why they're being so successful over the years, right? Because they don't reach, right? I think the worst thing a team can do, and I'm talking about Atlanta Falcons here, of course, is reaching for players based off needs, right? So I'm not 100% sure that this is philosophy. But I think more than likely Atlanta Falcons try to focus on some of their needs in free agency, and then they push until the draft trying to get the best player available. Um, and everybody draft board is different. So when a best player available to us and to some other scout analysts out there and front offices might not be the same as the Atlanta Falcons. So that's one thing that we always got to factor in when we talking about best player available. A couple of times the Atlanta Falcons pick guys and we thought, well, he wasn't the best player available, but on their board he had to be because that's why they went there. And and a lot of time it has nothing to do with what they really need, which frustrated a lot of Falcon fans because we all kind of know, especially the last three drafts, that we thought Atlanta Falcons was going defense and they went offense. So it's you never really know what you're going to get out the Atlanta Falcons. But we do know it seems like their philosophy is always going best player available in the draft. And so you can kind of do your mocks when you're doing your mock drafts and you're looking at the other analysts out there trying to see who they feel like the best player, available. And if you it marries, right? Because if you go and look at a lot of different draft analysts out there, they got players fluctuating. Some people got first round grades on guys. Some people got second round grade on guys, right? A lot of people put the quarterbacks higher than maybe they should be in the draft because it's a quarterback driven league, right? So we know that. So, you always have to factor in best player available, but it's the Atlanta Falcon best player available. So I just want to put that caveat out there. So when you thinking, hey, they should have took this guy because he was the best player, no, right? One of the things that they always say, and listen to Terry Fontenot, is the makeup, right? So they always talk about the makeup of the guy, right? And I think what that means to me, one thing in particular is, do they love football, right? A lot of guys now, especially now, if you're looking at this NIL world from the college standpoint, and our guys, a lot of these guys coming in making millions already based off the NIL deal, especially guys going in the first round. They had to be good enough, probably good NIL deals of collectors, whatever they want to call it right now. So it's not about the money so much now, right? Yes, you can get generational wealth, basically you get to your second contract in the NFL. But a lot of these guys coming in and they already don't got houses for their moms and they got all kind of cars and jewelries and things like that. So it's not like it was back in the day where guys coming in and they're going to get their mom out of the hood and things like that. Some of these guys already did that because of their NIL deals, and you can see around the league that's what's happening. So when you're talking about the makeup of a player, um, first of all, do they love football, right? And then I guess you have to look at the intangibles. They go and think about these scouts. They got regional scouts that go and they go all the way back to elementary school. Sometimes, in some cases, with some of these guys, go all the way up, talk all their coaches, all their teachers, you know, people around the communities, just kind of see what kind of person this is. Because think about it, it's an investment for the team. So when they looking at the makeup of a guy, and that brings me to a lot of people talking about Jalen Carter versus Bijan Robinson, right? Both of the guys I think is going to be all pros in this league. Both Bijan Robinson and Jalen Carter, right? But I think what it boils down to with Atlanta Falcons is they didn't like his makeup per se. right? So they went with the clean cut other All Pro, potential All Pro, and Bijan Robinson, which in my opinion is another generational player. So that's what you got to look at. Did they have Bijan ranked higher on their board than they had Jalen Carter? It seems like it, right? A lot of people felt like they should have went defense, and right, you look at what transpired in the Super Bowl, and a lot of people in today's society always want to go with what they seen last, right? We've seen Jalen Carter and what the Eagles defense did in the Super Bowl. See, the Falcons should have went with that, right? But then you also seen what Bijan Robinson was able to do his first 2 seasons in his league, and he's living up to the hype as well. So I don't like to compare guys, especially guys that both want to be potential All Pros. And say the Atlanta Falcons made a mistake, because they did not make a mistake with a guy like Bijan Robinson. So that's another thing. So you have to look at that. You have to look at best player available, look at the makeup of the player, and then maybe last they might look at um, need, right? They might look at need at the end, right? We need this position? If it's a need, and if you're not reaching, go ahead and pull the trigger, because it meet at least 2 of your 3 criterias, right? Maybe your best player available is already off the board, but they got good makeup, and it's one of the needs you need, and it's next on your list. That's probably the individual that you go ahead and select in the draft. So I think that's one of the things that we got to think about. And what I like about the philosophy is they do best player available, so it's kind of easy, because if that's the best player on your board and he's there, it's easy. It's an easy decision, right? You all decided that guy is there, right? Um, if you need him or not, he's the best player. You're gonna find a way to utilize him in your on your team. We seen out Tyler Algier was 1,000-yard running back his first season, and Atlanta Falcons go right back and they pick Bijan Robinson because he was the best player available. And yes, now Tyler Algier probably is expendable, right? Because you don't need two, starting quality running backs on your team. But now you got an asset out there that you can utilize. And if they decide not to trade a guy like Tyler Algier, they can have him this year. More than likely, he go into free agency next year, and you can get a compensatory pick because you lost one of your players, in free agency. So that's how that works out. Or you can try to trade him and get something for him this year. You won't save a lot of cap savings with a guy like Tyler Jerk, because you only make about $1.8 million. So, but that's what you do when you get gold best player available. April Thomas said, "What's everyone we need a pass rusher." That is 100% true. We do need a pass rusher. So, so when we talk about the Falcon strategy, right? So we talked about Terry Fontenot, right? His first 3 years and his draft philosophies, right? Now let's add Raheem Morris to it, right? And Raheem Morris came in, and I believe that Raheem Morris put a different spin on this draft philosophy, just a little bit, right? I think the first thing they did was they determined that they need a quarterback, right? They looked at the first 3 seasons under Terry Fontenot, and the quarterback play was not good. Probably the best season was Matt last year here, right? And we just was not talented enough that year to do anything. Still produced 7 wins with that team, but then the last 2 seasons, it just didn't pan out the way we wanted it, right? Um, Before this past season, quarterback up and down. You bring in a guy like Marcus Mariota to try to, be that bridge with him and Desmond Ritter. Um, didn't go well. Put Desmond Ritter in, looked promising, but then to come back the next season, and he was just a turnover machine that we did not expect for him. So that's where we're where we were with the quarterback position. Raheem Morris coming in, laid it out during the combine of all things, right? That's going to be up next week. And he talked about the Atlanta Falcons need a quarterback, right? So the first thing they do, You look at the strategy. They went out and signed a free agent quarterback in Kirk Cousins, $180 million. We know 100 million guaranteed. We know the rest, right? Um, and then they doubled down in the draft. They doubled down in the draft, which tells me that Raheem Morris and maybe this was Terry Fontenot's mindset as well was they need a quarterback. They need a quarterback. So they doubled down. They went and got Kirk Cousins on a 4-year deal, 2 years guaranteed. We all know the history here. Don't have to, you know, we talk about it all over again. But at the same time, they went and got Michael Penix. So the question is, right? Was Michael Penix the best player on the board at the time, or was it the makeup, or was it the need? That's the question when you think about adding Raheem Morris to the mix, right? Because when you add Raheem Morris to the mix, did Terry alter his philosophy from going BPA and now going to get one of the most important positions in the league, which is the quarterback position, where they had already got a quarterback in free agency and they decided to double down and pick Michael Penix Jr. in the draft. Now we have heard reports that other teams have definitely thought that Michael Penix was going to drop the deal, like the Raiders. They assumed that they was going to have a chance to get him. I even think the Vikings would have had an opportunity to probably try to pick Michael Penix as well. But the Falcons decided to pull him off the board. And when we looking at the draft strategy, adding Raheem to the mix, did they stick to that philosophy of best player available, or did they actually go off the makeup and the need? Where we saw from the 3 previous seasons where quarterback was one of the biggest needs that Atlanta Falcons had. Wasn't the only need, right? We do know that wasn't the only need, but it was one of the biggest needs. So it seemed like they doubled down on it. All right. So another thing about Raheem Morris, and I'm going to add 2 teams to the mix where I think you can kind of look at what Raheem is trying to do. So you look at the young LA Rams, right? And you look at when they had Aaron Donald and how dynamic that defensive front was. And then you look at the last season on Raheem Morris when he got all those young defensive linemen to play really well, right? Now you look at what they was able to do this season, and probably one of the best defensive fronts in the league. And they are all young. They are all young. They are all young, right? So when you're looking at that, and now you go back to this 2024 draft that the Atlanta Falcons just did, they went and got a bunch of young defensive players to add to this Atlanta Falcons defense. They took a Rook Roro. They took a Brandon Dorless. They took a Braylon Trice, right? They took those guys. And now you pair those guys up with a Zach Harrison. You pair those guys up with Evan Katie. Young defensive line, right? That's what the Atlanta Falcons decide to do. So it makes you wonder, did Raheem Morris take some of his philosophies that he had when he was with the Los Angeles Rams and bring that and mix that in with Terry Fontenot philosophies, with taking the best player available and makeup, and then the need and wanting to go younger. You look at the Los Angeles Rams, how dynamic that defensive front is. They all young guys, right? Now you can build around that young defensive line. You get good quarterback play. You got outstanding coaching with Sean McVay, right? You get all that, put that together. Now you got a young defensive line. You also look at a team like the Philadelphia Eagles, who just won the Super Bowl, and you look at their young defense as well, right? Really young on the defensive side of the ball. They got all the pieces they need on the offensive side of the ball, which means that they can sustain for years to come, right? So And people saying Howard Roseman is knocking it out the park, right? But his strategy, his draft strategy has really paid dividends for him, right? Yes, he made big free agent signings and things like that. He was able to go out and get AJ Brown, but look at his draft strategy, right? He had Carson Wentz on the team. They just paid him, and they decided to take Jalen Hurts, right? Jalen Hurts been to the Super Bowl twice. But you look at that young defense that they got, right? They was able to take some of those older guys that they had for all those years and just replace them with younger guys that's going to make this defensive front stout for years to come. Look at the secondary with the two nice young cornerbacks that they got, right? I mean, the Philadelphia Eagles and the Los Angeles Rams should be the blueprint for what the Atlanta Falcons should be trying to do moving forward, right? But they already started, and that's what I wanted to talk about. What they was able to do last year, right? Getting a Rook, getting a Brandon Dorless, getting a Brandon Trice, right? Those guys, and then you add those guys with a Zach Harrison and an Armor Ebiketie, right? Young guys, D'Angelo Malone's, all these young guys that they added to the fold, right? Now, it's all going to be predicated if these guys are able to actually get better. Right now, these guys got to start to dominate. They got to start paying dividends because you draft guys. You want to see those jumps from year one to year two. You see Armor Katie has started to make progress, but Armor Katie is going to his contract year, so this has to be the year for him to be able to come out and do some great things. Zach Harrison going to his third season. We definitely want to see what he's able to do. Right, Root going to his second season, year one to year two jump for him. Brandon Dorless, kicks he can get more playing time out of him. And we haven't seen Brandon Trice yet because he got injured, but we'll be able to see what we can get out of Brandon Trice. So those are the draft strategies. What I like that Raheem Morris brought to the table, along with Terry Fontenot. Um, you add that best player available mentality to it, but then you say we want to get young in some places, right? That's what we want to do. We want to get young, and look at the moves they made this past season. Now all these guys got to start paying out, right? And like I said earlier, when you're talking about drafts, you won't know for about another 2 or 3 years from when you draft the guy if it did it work out for him. But let's hope that's where it's going, because if the Atlanta Falcons get younger and these guys can start playing well, you can establish a formula like what the Philadelphia Eagles have done. You can establish a formula like what the Philadelphia Los Angeles Rams have done as well, right? So that's where when I think the the Atlanta Falcon philosophy at, where it started at with Raheem Morris, with Arthur Smith, and where it has changed with the addition of Raheem Morris as the head coach, where I think they're trying to go for the youth movement and build those guys up, develop guys. You have to have a great coaching staff to develop players and things like that, and that's what we're starting to see. So hopefully we can definitely um, see some growth from our young players that we got, right? The last but not least, when I talk about the draft strategy, is that, and now this goes back probably from the inception of the Atlanta Falcons, where their inability to draft a pass rusher. It's really interesting, and it's just unexcusable. The Atlanta Falcons cannot, and they're not able to draft a dominant pass rusher to this team, right? You look at all the other positions, you say they went and got an All Pro at some positions in the draft, right? But when it comes to pass rusher, which is one of the most important positions um, in this league, because you look at you want to say which one the most important, you look at the dollar, how much these players are getting paid, and it'll tell you how important that position is. And when it comes to defensive end, outside linebacker, when it comes to the pass rush, Atlanta Falcons have the inability to draft pass rushers. It's just a fact. It's nowhere around it. They have the inability to do it. They can't do it, right? And maybe that's why they're gun shy. There's a report out there, I think from the Athletic, said that that's probably why they just refused to draft a guy in the first round, because every guy they drafted so far have not panned it out. Right? You look at a guy like Tat McKinley, you look at a guy like um, Vic Beasley, right? These guys have not panned out, right? They show flashes, but for some reason, when Atlanta Falcons drafted defensive pass rusher in the first round, it had not panned out. Maybe this is the year, you know, they get around it, right? This is a deeper class, um, in the middle of the draft, from like 20 to 60, right? Maybe the Atlanta Falcons drop back. Maybe their pass rush will still be there, but that's where when you're looking at the Atlanta Falcons and you're thinking about their draft philosophy, right? Um, one thing they can't do, and they have not been able to do for decades, is draft a dominant pass rusher, somebody that they can say that this guy is going to be a perennial, all pro, and is going to go to the Hall of Fame at that position. We have not had that, and that's just crazy to me because there've been so many talented guys, and Atlanta Falcons have passed on some of these potential Hall of Famers. Right, you look at a guy like T.J. Watt; they passed on him. That's the same year Tat McKinley came out. So Atlanta Falcons, just whoever their scout for pass rushers, they might need to make changes with that, because that individual has not helped them at all bringing pass rusher in. So whatever their philosophy is, um, that's one of the things that they got to fix. Being able to go out and draft the pass rusher. So, guys, let me know what you think about the Atlanta Falcons draft strategy, their philosophy. Um, are they going to stick with the best player available? Are they going to go with the whole makeup? Or are they going to go with the need this year? Um, let's see. I'm really interested, just like you guys are, and let's see what direction Atlanta Falcons decide to go in this off season when it comes to the NFL draft. All right, now let's get into some rumors. About the Atlanta Falcons, and the rumors that's out right now. There's a couple rumors. One rumor in particular that I think that'll make a lot of Atlanta Falcon fans happy is the trade of Kirk Cousins. Right, if the Atlanta Falcons are able to somehow, you know, trade Kirk Cousins, that would be lovely for a lot of Atlanta Falcon fans. We know the whole controversy he had a couple weeks ago now, saying that he was injured, after the Yanks game, and we saw what happened. That we went on a 5-game losing streak, 4-game losing streak. We won the fifth one, but it was still not good from him. Um, and pretty much that ended our season, right? That 4-game losing streak in the Atlanta Falcons season, without a doubt. But so it seems like the Atlanta Falcons and Kirk Cousins more likely is going to have a split, right? But it would definitely be beneficial if the Atlanta Falcons can get something out of it, right? They gave this guy $90 million guaranteed. The last $10 million, if he's still on the roster by March 17th, they will have to guarantee that as well. That would equal that $100 million guaranteed money that they owe him, right? So if they can find a trade partner um, with Kirk Cousins, and we know he has to work with the Atlanta Falcons because he does have a no trade clause. So that's one of the things would really be good. It was a rumor that the Jets might have interest in him. Right, they had interest in him years ago before he went to Minnesota. And we know the Jets still have issues with their quarterback position. They just told Aaron Rodgers that his service was no longer needed. And it's a rumor out there they're thinking about going with Tyrod Taylor. Another rumor that they might be interested in a guy like Justin Field as well. But if they want a savvy, experienced quarterback that's going into his 14th season, 2 years removed from his Achilles injury, and I guess his shoulder injury as well that we didn't know about. they might get a solid quarterback. He still want to be a star in this league. Of course, he get to pick his destination. I think Kirk Cousins, his agent, probably preferred Atlanta Falcons to cut him, right, and let him pick where he want to go. But if I Atlanta Falcons and my infinite wisdom, I would try to trade him. So that was one of the rumors out there that the New York Jets might be interested in Kirk Cousins. Don't know how reliable that is. What would the Atlanta Falcons get, from a Kirk Cousins trade? Hopefully at least the fifth round pick. That would be great. If we get higher than the third, I would be happy with that as well. But we need to get more picks in this draft. The Atlanta Falcons only got 5 picks, and 2 of their picks are 7 rounders. So um, this really they need to get some more draft capital. We just talked about going young in the draft, trying to build a team up, with you know going back into cap constraints because of the Kirk Cousins contract. The Atlanta Falcons need to get more draft capital. It's just that simple. So whatever they can get for the Kirk Cousins trade would be beneficial for them. So don't see them give him that $10 million. And before I thought maybe um, they're willing to pay that $10 million, to Kirk Cousins. Now that $10 million for next season as well, but it's guaranteed. You know, starting this new league year, so they got to make a decision by then. And I think if they're not able to have trade partners, I don't think a team want to trade with them because they feel like they're gonna have to release him anyway. So Atlanta Falcons, it's not in a win-win here. But in my opinion, they could they can bluff, man. Bring him in, pay the 10 million. Sorry, the sunk cost anyway, and make him find him a trade partner. Um, that's probably what I would do at the end of the day, but we'll just have to see. Another trade rumor that's really interesting is Kyle Pitts. Um, like I said, these are rumors, but it was reported that the Kansas City Chiefs contacted the Atlanta Falcons, you know, about Kyle Pitts. That would be really special for Kyle Pitts, to go play in that offense with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And of course, this is, if Travis Kelce decide that he's going to, hang him up this year. And if he does, um, they're going to need another dynamic playmaker. A lot of people still believe that Kyle Pitts has the potential to be really, really good in this league, myself included. Um, I just feel like he wasn't a part of the offense last year. He did have 2,000-yard receivers, on the team. Bijan catching the ball out of the backfield. Sometimes it's just the ball's not, but I think you add Kyle Pitts to the mix, this offense can be just even more dynamic than it already is. So, but if they're able to get a trade, they can save $10 million because his whole contract is guaranteed, right? Because he's in his fifth year. Um, they probably could. I would want at least a fourth round pick for Kyle Pitts if I was going to trade him. That's just me. Uh, I know a lot of people saying look at numbers and things like that, but he didn't have a terrible season last year. It wasn't the number that we would expect from a number 4 overall pick. Solid tight end numbers for a third. A tight end probably was maybe the fourth option on the team behind Darnell Mooney, Drake London, and Bijan Robinson, right? So you kind of understand where um, his numbers are not what we want him to be, but I feel like he should be more a part of the offense. We'll have to see, but that is room out there. And if the Kansas City Chiefs are willing to give the Atlanta Falcons good draft capital, go back to what I said earlier about the Kirk Cousins trade. You want to be able to get good draft capital, if anything, because you want more draft picks, right? It's already potential that Atlanta Falcons can even move back in the draft to try to get more picks on day 2. They got one second round pick, no third round pick, no fifth round pick, no sixth round pick. So they need to get some draft capital, guys. It's just that simple, and hopefully we'll be able to see the Atlanta Falcons do that. Um, don't want to see them trade any, Kyle Pitts because I think he has potential. Um, I just think he's not being utilized right. Maybe, you change of scenery might be good for him. So we'll have to see how that pans out. But I do believe that Atlanta Falcons could get something for him in a pick in a draft in a trade. So let's see how true these rumors are. If the Atlanta Falcons are even willing to trade Kyle Pitts, we have not heard anything official in that aspect. Now we definitely hear from Terry Fontenot and Raheem Morris next week at the combine. It'll be interesting to see what they got to say if they even get asked a question about Kyle Pitts moving forward. All right, all right. So let's go to my last topic of the day, and this is my perfect off season for the Atlanta Falcons. Right? Um, I don't have specific players, guys. I'm sorry about that. Free agents and things like that. That would make it even more perfect if I can actually tell you who we're gonna actually get and things like that. But we'll have to see how the everything shakes out. You know, Doing free agency and cuts and things like that. We'll just have to see, right? But my perfect off season, and I want you guys to remember this and see that was I even close to what Atlanta Falcons potentially could do this off season. Um, so the first thing I do, we just talked about it. I would try to trade Kirk Cousins. If you could trade Kirk Cousins, get something back for him. It's already sunk cost. You're probably gonna have to eat most of the cap anyway for that contract. So let's do it. But if we can get some draft capital off of it, I would not be upset about that. So my first thing that I would do, I would try to trade Kirk Cousins. That would be my first number one priority this next week, going to the combine. Hopefully they get with some of their counterparts out there and try to see if they can get a trade party going and see can Kurt agree to it. Right. My next thing I would do, I would extend Grady Jarrett. Right. I know I just went this whole spiel about going young. I do agree that they need to go young, but I also believe that they need some veteran presence on that defensive front. And I think Grady Jarrett, um, who is a Falcon, probably one of the greatest Falcons when it's all be said and done from his stint here with the Atlanta Falcons. Um, he's a Falcon, man. It'll be sad to see him go. I know Atlanta Falcons do have some hard situations. Do they ever want to even extend Grady? But this would lower his cap number. I think his cap number is like at 20 something million right now. If you give him a small extension, you can lower that cap number and you can recoup some cap space that we need. This way, we can keep Grady Jarrett. Now, unfortunately, you would have to decide to release David Amayada. Um, don't think you need both of those guys. We just talked about the youth movement. You want to be able to get some of those guys on the field, younger guys on the field, see what they're made of. If you got Grady and David here, both of those guys, I think it would hurt the team and hurt the growth of your young players. So just one, and I would say let's keep Grady because he is the ultimate Falcon. So that would be um, my first two moves: trade Kirk, Stan Grady, and of course release David. All right. Now, what you got to do is you got to create cap space right now. Atlanta Falcons, by depending on where you're looking at, $8 million, $11 million over the cap. So by new league year, they need to be up under the cap. So things I would do, I would restructure contracts. I would restructure Jesse Bates, Chris Lindstrom, and Jake Matthews. Maybe they can extend Jake because I think he's closest on the extension more than a structure. So maybe they can extend Jake Matthews, but definitely you want to restructure Jesse Bates and Chris Lindstrom contract guys that you know that you potentially give another contract um, down the road here. So both of those guys, you expect them to be with the team for a while. So you're restructuring Jesse and Chris um, Lindstrom contract to create more cap space. That would be great. Jake Matthews, you might have to give him an extension. So now you're extending Grady and Jake. You know, two of the guys that was the only two guys that was the 2016 Super Bowl, um, still on the roster, playing decent football for the Atlanta Falcons still. Right. My next move, go to the defensive side of the ball. I would bring back Mike Hughes. Mike Hughes, um, thought he had a solid year, and this is just about the cap. Definitely need a number two solid corner on the other side of AJ Terrell. But if you bring a guy like Mike Hughes back, you know, on a cheaper deal that will save some cap savings, and he was not that terrible of our number two cornerback for us last year. So I would be one of the things you got to look at your own free agent first, and I would see can you bring back Mike Hughes on a good team friendly deal, um, and be a solid number two on the opposite side of AJ Terrell. Nate Landman is a restricted free agent, so you just got to be able to match what he gets. I would bring Nate Landman back, try to keep some kind of continuity with that linebacker room. Also believe that they need to go out and look for other linebackers, but if if you're trying to keep some of the team intact, Nate Landman, um, if he don't come back, I wouldn't be, really upset about it because I think the Atlanta Falcons need to make moves in at that position anyway. But restructure. I mean, let's get Nate Landman um, a nice contract that will not break the bank for the Atlanta Falcons. Good, solid tackler, not so good in pass coverage. So maybe he'll be positional linebacker on the field for us. Especially in in base defenses, and then we go to nickel. Bring in another cornerback. I mean another linebacker. So that's where I'm thinking with a guy like Nate Landman. Um, Now, so since with all the restructures and extensions and things like that, they can actually go out and get a nickel free agent, right? They go get a free agent from a nickel standpoint. We need somebody to play that nickel position. I think the offer, it's not going to cut the mustard. The Atlanta Falcons need to make a change there, so they can either get a free agent, you know, cornerback, or they can draft one at number 15, right? We know their track record of not getting good pass rushers, but their last cornerback they drafted, um, one of the best cornerbacks in the league, in AJ Terrell. So at least we can say they do got some track record of having being able to draft that position. So either they go get a nickel cornerback, um, in free agency, or they can take one in the draft. That's what they need to do. Now, when you're looking at that, they can either go get a free agent pass rusher or draft one. So where they don't get one in the draft, I mean free agency, that's what you're going to get in the draft. So you gotta follow me. So if they go out and get a pass rusher in free agency, and if a guy like Will Johnson is there at number 15, you take him and you kind of boosted up your pass rush in the draft, right? And you're hoping guys that Braylon Trice, Herman Ebiketie, Zach Harrison, Brandon Dorless, Brooke Roro, these guys can improve and be better for you this upcoming season. And you get a veteran present on a like a Khalil Mack or somebody like that, right? And see can you get these guys to grow, coming into this season. So either get a free agent cornerback or pass rusher, or you draft a cornerback or a pass rusher. Whatever you don't do in free agency, that's what you need to do in the draft. In that first round, you can always double down in the later rounds with your other four picks that you got, or really it's two picks, second and fourth rounder, because 7 round picks you wouldn't be expecting a lot from them. And then the last thing, guys, I would say you need to decide on DeMarco Hellams if he's going to be your number two safety or not, or consider bringing Justin Simmons back. Um, you just have to make that decision. You could definitely go in free agency in the draft as well, that position. I'm thinking about, where you're going to spend your money at, and spend your some of your cap space at. Do you want to invest in, in a really, really high price safety there, or you could look at a guy like DeMarco Hellers and thinking that, he's going to be the guy for you moving forward? Or do you want to give Justin Simmons another chance, alongside Jesse Bates, bring him back on a nice team friendly deal and see if he's willing to do that? And then you still have, um, in my opinion, still some of the two best safety tandems in the league. So that's something to consider. But if the Atlanta Falcons can pull all this off, um, and I definitely didn't talk about the other rounds, from my dream offseason. But if they could, potentially double up on some positions in the draft, like if you go get pass rusher, you know, at number 15, go back in the second round and pick another pass rusher, right? You need to be able to kill this curse that you have as Atlanta Falcons, not being able to get a dominant pass rusher here, right? It's this like a running joke for Atlanta Falcons, for like the last 15 years, where Atlanta Falcons cannot get the pass rush down. And everybody knows they need it, right? It's a need every year for this team. And for some reason, they can't figure it out. So let this be the year that it ends, right? You don't see the Cleveland Browns saying they need a defensive end, right? You don't see the San Francisco 49ers, right? You don't see the Houston Texans. You don't see these teams saying they need a defense. You always want an extra. If you got, or you can get another pass rusher, by all means, let's do it. But you don't see where these teams, you know, year in, year in and year out, their biggest need is pass rusher. And for years, this is where the Atlanta Falcons found themselves at. Maybe this the year that the curse ends. You just don't know. I just talked about their philosophy. Maybe they go best player available again, and at number 15, the best player available might be a pass rusher. So we just don't know the direction they're going in. But let's hope they get it right. But guys, that's my perfect season. I'm really curious to see what you guys think about it. Please put your comments in, ask any questions that you want, share, of course, and like this video throughout. We got a comment here. It said, if Trice can step up and be productive, 6 to 8 sacks this year, the decent will look totally different, especially with strides that AK has made. I agree 100%. And that's what I mean. You go back to the beginning of when I talked about Raheem Morris spin on the philosophy here. He's going young, right? And if you look at Ruko Roro, you look at Braylon Darlis, you look at Trice, right? You look at Zach Harrison, you look at Armor Ebiketie, you are exactly right. If they're able to have that jump that we need, we haven't seen what Braylon Trice can bring to the table. We haven't seen that at all. So if we can see, if he could do, some of the things he was able to do when he was with the University of Washington, that would be great. He showed flashes, guys, in training camp. I seen it. He only had 2 training camps this year, but he showed flashes of the potential of how good he potentially could be. I know one thing about Braylon Trice. What they liked about him, what I liked about him, was his motor. He's not going to quit. He's one of those guys that's relentless, trying to get after the quarterback. That's what you like to see. So it's going to be really interesting to see how Braylon Trice is able to come back from his injury and see if he can be productive this year. But you are right. Braylon Trice steps up. Armor Ebiketie continue to jump, right? He's in a contract year. So you should expect Armor Ebiketie to have one of his best seasons this year, because the guy want to get paid. So we'll definitely see that. But you're 100% right. This defense can look different if just those guys stand up. He also says, I agree we need to have the same energy we had last year when it comes to fixing the quarterback issues. Leave no stones unturned. Let's get talented rookie and a savvy. There you go. That's what I'm talking about. Like double down, right? You mentioned it. They when they got a free agent quarterback, then they drafted one, right? You go get a free agent pass rusher, then you draft one. Hey, you can find spots for these guys, right? The best player is gonna make the roster, um, and that's what you got to do. That's what you got to do. You know, the end. This note, guys. What I want to talk about today is the Falcons got a lot of tough decisions to make, right? You know, I just put my perfect off season about keeping Grady, um, get rid of David. It'd be interesting to see what direction the Atlanta Falcons decide to go with those two guys. Right, those are the two elder statesmen on the team. You know, in that defensive room. Right, do you want to go completely young and get rid of both of those guys? It'd be interesting to see what they decide to do in that situation. But they have to do something with that cap number. Grady cap number is way too high. Um, so I would think they might have to just give him a small extension. That would be the best bet, you know, moving forward. Brady is going into his 11th season. I don't know how many more years he got to play, but you know, 2 year extension here, put him at 13 seasons, you know, and then hey, after that, it might be time for Brady to go. But 13 seasons with one team, with one franchise, um, I think will be special. So, and he's still playing at a high level. You know, he returned from an injury last year, so hopefully he can get back to, you know, before the injury where he was playing. But it wasn't that far off from, you know, what we expect from Grady Jarrett from what we've seen this year. So I have a lot of respect for what they were able to get with him. But there you have it, guys. So I'm interested to see. Let me know what you think about my perfect offseason. Um, that we can get from the Atlanta Falcons, it would be something special in my book if they could do that. Do that. And then if they decide to go with the whole young philosophy, you know, the question is how much time do Raheem Morris has, right? Can he afford to go all young and let these guys develop, or do we have to get off the snot this year and make it to the postseason? That's going to be the key. So that could drive, you know, the decisions they make as well. Um, being able to win now, vice looking towards the future with a young, talented team that have. Um, looking at some of those guys on offense, their contract is coming up too, so you have to think about that. Guys like Drake London, Bijan, a couple of years, still got a couple of seasons before they have to, you know, consider doing something with Bijan contract. But some of these guys coming up, Kyle Pitts, if they don't trade him, we like I said, he's in his 5th year this season. Usually, teams try to get something done in that season, so it'll be interesting to see what they do. So, guys, there you have it. Let me know what you think about the 3 topics we talked about today. Just to recap, first topic was the Falcons draft strategy, their philosophy, how they go about drafting players year in and year out, the change that was made between, you know, Raheem Morris and Arthur Smith. Did the philosophy change at all? On a couple of rumors that we talked about the Kirk Cousins trade, potential Kyle Pitts trade, Atlanta Falcons being able to recoup, you know, draft capital there, or maybe even a player back for one of those guys. Just don't know. And then last but not least, my perfect offseason would, in my opinion, would make the Falcons be um, contenders this year if they can make some of these moves happen. So, guys, there you have it. This is your boy Ricondo coming back at you with another video. Peace.